It was the 4th year of my marriage into the Chin family. My wife, Chin Muksu's other childhood sweetheart, Pei Jibai, returned to China. My wife, who was always as cold as an iceberg in front of others, instantly came alive again. She missed my birthday and our wedding anniversary. She took her childhood sweetheart to all kinds of business events. It still wasn't enough for him. He found someone to tell my wife's fortune, claiming I brought bad luck to her and that she should divorce me. Before the divorce even happened, my wife ended up in a vegetative state. My wife had 2 childhood sweethearts. Growing up, one died the year my wife loved him most. The other went to study in Germany. He said he'd be gone for 3 years, but 7 years later he still hadn't come back. 4 years ago, with a face that was 80% like my wife's dead first love, I caught the eye of my billionaire wife. I escaped my miserable life as a low-level office drone making 3,000 yuan a month. My wife wanted me to get a vasectomy and marry into her family. In return, I got 200,000 yuan a month in pocket money. After we married, I perfectly played the role of her first love, exactly as she wanted. Except during her period, whenever she needed it, we would always be intimate at 9:30 in the evening. Tonight, my wife was so passionate I felt like I'd be drained dry. Right in the heat of the moment, her phone rang. It was the special ringtone she'd set for Pei Jibai in Germany. "Babai, why are you calling at this hour? You know my period's over." Breathless and sweaty, my wife answered the phone, gasping. I lowered my eyes, hiding any trace of amusement, and stopped obediently to let her finish the call. "Whatever Pei Jibai said over there," my wife hummed in response. When she looked at me again, the obsession from earlier was gone, replaced by disdain and arrogance. "Why are you getting upset over a toy? Of course I love Ajin. When you get back, I'll pick you up at the airport, and we can talk properly." My wife hung up, tossed her phone aside, and kissed me passionately again. The toy performed beyond expectations, carrying her through wave after wave of pleasure. After the sound of running water started. In the bathroom, Pei Jibai sent me a message. "Xiaohe, I'm coming back to China. If you know what's good for you, you'll leave on your own. With me here, Mumu will dump a stand-in like you soon enough." I deliberately sent him a stock photo of a neck covered in love bites. "Have you ever seen Mumu this passionate?" "No, right?" She said, "The one time you two tried, you bailed before you even got started." With his level of intelligence, he'd assumed the photo was of my wife. Pei Jibai took the bait, just as I knew he would, and immediately sent me his flight information. I saved it silently, then got up to take a shower. The day Pei Jibai returned to China, the people I'd hired took clear, high-definition photos of him holding a child and holding hands with a woman. They followed them to where his girlfriend and child lived. I came home from work as usual. The usually quiet living room of the villa was filled with laughter and chatter. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Wu, saw me first and waved me over with a smile. "Xiaohe, you're back. Let me introduce you, this is Baby Pei Jibai. He grew up with Mumu. Baby specially brought medicine back from Germany for Mumu. I've already had Mumu switch to it." My wife, Chin Muksu, glanced up at me, and the smile faded from her face. I kept the polite smile I'd practiced 1,000 times and glanced casually at Pei Jibai. Pei Jibai deliberately shifted his body to put some distance between himself and my wife, then greeted me Drudong. "Hello, Xiaohe. I'm Pei Jibai, Mumu's childhood friend. Just got back from studying in Germany." "Hello, I've heard Mumu talk about the 3 of you so many times." I nodded politely. "We both know what's really going on. No need to put on an act." My wife was pleased with how well behaved I was, and her smile returned. "Baby staying for dinner. Xiaohe, go tell the chef he's allergic to seafood." "Okay." I turned and headed for the kitchen. Pei Jibai didn't seem to believe my calm, mild reaction was genuine, so he followed me to the kitchen to go over the dinner menu. "Xiaohe, you're nothing but a stand-in. Don't ever delude yourself into thinking Mumu could ever love you. Now that I'm back, she'll dump you soon enough." I smiled and nodded. About time, honestly. After all, I never wanted my wife's love. I wanted their lives. The olanzapine Pei Jibai had brought back from Germany for my wife sat on the desk. The old medication was tossed into a drawer by my mother-in-law. 3 years of posting fake happy couple moments on my moments had been worth it. I planned and ran Pagibai's welcome banquet entirely on my own. My mother-in-law was satisfied with how thoughtful I was. All these years she'd only cared about getting a grandchild out of my wife. She didn't care who the father was. I didn't care either. If you want to get by in life, you learn to look the other way. The banquet was lively. I kept up appearances, circulating with my wife to introduce Pagibai, then gracefully stepped aside. A few of my wife's childhood friends held champagne glasses and sneered at my humility and cowardice. Xiaohe, you really do have patience. When Mumu and Beibai were little, they were inseparable. Even in middle school, they slept in the same bed. Doesn't it make you jealous at all? Forgot you're a live-in son-in-law. You'll just have to swallow that jealousy all by yourself. Everyone in high society knew that I, the Qin family's son-in-law, had a gentle temperament, was a great coup. Kay could paint and play the piano, and carried myself better than any of those rich second-generation brats. What else could I do? I was just trying to get by. Being a stand-in son-in-law wasn't easy. I lifted my champagne glass, my smile perfectly measured. Being with Mumu is the best thing that ever happened to me. Mumu's always been free to do as she pleases. If it weren't for this face, I'd never have met her in a million years. The rich kids who'd been mocking me exchanged uncomfortable looks and quickly scattered. My wife and Pagibai were nowhere to be seen. I wasn't curious, but someone couldn't stand to see me so calm and collected. They had a club attendant lead me out to the central courtyard. It was exactly 9:30 in the evening. It was the time my wife had first slept with her first love, all those years ago. It was also the time my wife and I usually had our marital relations. Inside the glass conservatory in the courtyard, my wife held Pagibai's hand and curled up in his arms, being affectionate. They hadn't done anything improper. When she saw me, my wife's face darkened instantly. Get out. Who said you could come into the courtyard? You're nothing but a dog. Don't go thinking you're a person. I immediately bowed my head and apologized. I'm sorry, Miss Chin. I'll leave right now. My wife only cared about my face. To her, I really was just an obedient dog. A flicker of triumph crossed Pagibai's face. He patted my wife's shoulder gently and helped her sit up from the lounge chair. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and soothed her softly. Don't be mad, Mumu. I'll have a word with him. My wife, who only ever softened to me during sex, was docile as a lamb in front of Pagibai. She grabbed his hand and warned him playfully. Don't be too long. Pagibai chuckled, let go of her, and walked toward me. I gave Pagibai one long hard look, then turned and left the courtyard. The Pei family had once been as wealthy and powerful as the Qin family in Ningcheng. Then Pagibai's father had an affair with his secretary, and the scandal ruined the Pei family. All that was left now was an empty shell. Pagibai wanted to turn things around and he needed my wife's full support to do it. I knew he was desperate. I was desperate too. Away from the glass conservatory, Pagibai stopped and lit a cigarette. Through the smoke he looked at me mockingly. A stand-in, always a stand-in, Xiaohe. To Mumu, you're just a thing. So what? But there's something you definitely don't know. I stepped forward, looked Pagibai straight in the eye, and deliberately provoked him. Pagibai, I'm Chinmuxu's legal husband. No matter what you do, you're just the other man. You know why she never reached out to you all these years? Because I look more and more like Zheng Jin. She can't live without me now. Sure enough, Pagibai punched me. I punched him back 10 times, beating him half to death before stopping. Then I closed my eyes and passed out right before my wife could come running over at the noise. Just as expected, my wife couldn't stand to see my face covered in blood. She rushed over and held me tight. Ajin, don't scare me. Open your eyes, look at me. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. Sobbing, she pointed at Pagibai and snapped at the bodyguards. Teach him a lesson, then throw him out. Pei. Jibei looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His face swollen like a pig's, he stared at my wife in disbelief. Mumu, you're hitting me for a stand-in? Can't you see I'm hurt worse than he is? Enough. You hit his face, ruined how much he looks like Zheng Jin. You got what you deserved. You brought this on yourself. I don't want to see you until his face heals. My wife was hysterical, her hands trembling as she stroked my swollen cheek. madness in her eyes. Paijabai was dragged away by the bodyguards, looking like he'd seen a ghost, and beaten to a pulp. I opened my eyes in my wife's arms, gave him a taunting smile, then closed my eyes and passed out again. That night, word spread through high society that Paijabai and my wife had fallen out over me. Bored onlookers even started secret bets on who would win. Paijabai and I were both hospitalized. I was in a VIP room. He was in a regular ward. While my wife was gone, he burst into my room and demanded angrily, "You did this on purpose, shall he? You know Mumu's mentally unstable and you're using her against me." "You're missing the point, Paijabai. Mumu's my wife. Of course she'd defend me. Why would she defend some shameless guy trying to be her side piece?" Choices made in anger almost always lead to worse outcomes. Paijabai was an emotional person by nature. He wanted to win my wife over to help save the Pei family. The safest way to do that was to get rid of me and take my place as her husband. The truth was, my wife never hid her distrust of me. 4 years of marriage, and every year she checked my bank statements, checked my connections at the company, terrified I'd steal company secrets and bleed her dry. Paijabai didn't know any of that. All he saw was the loving facade I wanted him to see. All he saw was my wife losing her mind over me. A man's jealousy could be far more terrifying. Paijabai would never admit defeat. He'd never accept that 20-something years of childhood friendship couldn't compare to 4 years of gentle devotion from a stand-in son-in-law. I was looking forward to his next move. Paijabai didn't let me down. The second he got out of the hospital, he went to my wife to apologize. They went to the cemetery together to pay their respects to Jiang Jin. He took her to see the old flower fields they'd loved as kids. He took her for rides on his motorcycle, reminiscing about the old days, pulling out all the romantic stops. In the videos he sent, my wife looked like she'd gone back to her carefree college days, a bright, unfamiliar smile on her face. Mumu loves Jiang Jin. Don't think you can climb your way up just because of your face. No matter how well you copy him, you'll always be a fake. Soon enough I'll make you see that a pretty face isn't enough. Paijabai was quick, that was for sure. On my wife's 27th birthday she didn't come home. My parents-in-law didn't blame her at all. On the contrary, they were all smiles, reassuring me not to take it to heart. Xiaohe, you have to understand Mumu. She hasn't celebrated her birthday outside since Jiang Jin passed, 7 years now. If Beibai got her to agree to a birthday dinner, it means she's trying to move on. Don't worry, Mom and Dad. I don't mind at all. If it's good for Mumu, a little sacrifice on my part is worth it. I wasn't the least bit upset. I'd be upset if Paijabai couldn't take my wife away from me. If he didn't try so hard, how would I expose his plan to leech off the Qin family? I wanted them to tear each other apart. Paijabai threw my wife a lavish birthday banquet. Overnight I went from the devoted husband to the laughingstock of high society. My wife didn't care at all. The new product celebration dinner she was supposed to bring me to? She took Paijabai as her +1 instead. Thanks to my wife's favoritism toward Paijabai, the Pei family picked up a few resources and started to recover. At the dinner, I circulated with my father-in-law for a while, then stepped out onto the balcony for some air. Paijabai cornered me there. He was wearing a custom suit my wife had made for him, and he looked at me like I was nothing but a worthless ant. Heard you've been at the company 4 years and you're still entry level. Switched departments how many times, and your salary still hasn't gone over 5,000. They say you put your money where your love is. I'm starting at Qin Group tomorrow. Funny enough, I'll be the supervisor of your department. Oh, and one more thing. I didn't bother listening to whatever else he had to say. When I saw my wife walking toward us, I deliberately stepped back, fell, and angled my head just right to crack it open on the edge of the railing. Paijabai froze like he'd been electrocuted. So he was capable of fear. How interesting. Crack. A sharp, loud slap. My wife stormed onto the balcony and slapped Paijabai across the face without hesitation, her voice sharp and furious. Paijabai, did I or did I not warn you never to hurt his face? Who do you think you are? If it weren't for Ajin, I never would have been friends with you in the first place. I held my throbbing, swollen head, squeezed the blood pack in my palm until it burst, and looked up at my wife with a hurt, mournful expression. It's not Bebi's fault. I just lost my balance. He only came over to tell me there's nothing between the two of you. He's your +1 at the celebration tonight because of the partnership between our families, that's all. Hearing how reasonable I was, and seeing my face covered in blood, made her feel even more guilty and protective. She called for the bodyguards and said irritably, "Let him stay out here and think about what he did. He doesn't leave until the dinner's over." Furious, Paige shoved the bodyguards aside and stormed off the balcony, not even bothering to say a word to my wife. My wife didn't care at all. She helped me to the car, and we left for the hospital, escorted by bodyguards. She cried the whole way there, quiet, broken sobs. "I'm sorry, Agent. I didn't mean it. Please forgive me. I just can't stand anyone getting close to you. I didn't mean to knock you out. Baby said you were dead, that's why I let him throw you over." I squeezed my wife's hand, hiding the scorn in my eyes, and soothed her gently. There, Mumu. I don't blame you. It's all Baby's fault. He's the one who made you act like this." They weren't tearing each other apart enough yet. Pageabai hadn't been pushed to his breaking point. Rumors soon spread through high society that Pageabai was the other man. He was the heir to the Pei family after all. A rumor like that was nothing short of humiliation. To prove he wasn't the other man, my wife, coaxed and manipulated by him, started bringing me along to business events on purpose. Word of this awkward threesome spread fast. By the time the other man rumors had mostly died down, it was Pageabai's birthday. It also happened to be my wedding anniversary with my wife. My people got photos of him celebrating his birthday with his girlfriend and their child. Then I headed over to the birthday banquet I'd thrown for him. The banquet was held at the same club as his welcome dinner. Everyone there was a familiar face from high society. I went to fetch a bottle of her prized Mouton Rothschild, and when I got back to the private room, I could hear them placing bets inside. I give it 3 months. Mumul dump Xiaohe and get together with Beibai. Mumo and Beibai were close even before Zhang Jin killed himself. What is Xiaohe anyway? Just some nobody from a regular family. My money's on Beibai and Mumu. Xiaohe doesn't deserve her. I didn't need to deserve her. I was the spouse listed on her household registration. If something happened to her, and there was no will, I was the first in line to inherit everything. I was about to open the door when Pageabai sent me a message. "If you want to know who Mumo cares about more, come to private room 2. Carrying the bottle of Mouton I just picked up from the club cellar, I pushed open the door to room 2. Pageabai was slouched on the white leather sofa, wearing a gray hoodie and black sweatpants like he was still in school. His eyes were full of scorn. He jerked his chin at me, gesturing for me to sit, and said casually, "Mumu will be with me sooner or later. We share a secret. You're nothing but a blip in her life. She'll choose me in the end, not you. We've had over 20 years together after all. Make a bet with me. If you lose, you'll be the one to ask Mumu for a divorce." I sat down in the armchair across from him, felt the blood pack in my pocket, and smiled. "Fine, I'll bet. Mumu will choose me, not you." Of course I knew they shared a secret. Why else would I have gone to all that trouble to lure him back from Germany? Stung by my confidence, Pageabai suddenly grabbed a beer bottle and smashed it against his own head. Shatter. Shards of glass rained across the floor. He swayed unsteadily, his eyes bloodshot, and looked past me toward the door of the private room. "Mumu Zhao, he hit me." I fought back a smirk, pulled out my blood pack, pressed it to my forehead and turned around, blood streaming down my face. My wife froze for a split second, then let out a shrill, horrified scream. "Ajin!" She threw herself at me, then snapped at the bodyguards behind her. "Break Pageabai's hands." He tried to kill my Ajin. Pageabai's eyes nearly popped out of his head with rage. "Mumu, are you insane?" "That? Zhaohe, not a Jin. You've hurt me over and over for a stand-in. Have you forgotten what you promised me?" My wife didn't listen to a word he said. She held me tight, trembling all over, and gave the order again. "He's too loud. Shut him up and break his hands." Pageabai struggled wildly, but he was no match for the bodyguards. I curled up in my wife's arms, fighting hard to keep from smiling. My wife's cognitive impairment seemed to be getting worse. She held me tight and rambled on and on like a mantra. "Ajin, there's nothing between Beibai and me. Don't get the wrong idea, he's so pathetic. I told him I don't love him, but he just keeps clinging to me. I raised an eyebrow and looked down at Pagerby, lying there half dead, a faint mocking smile on my face. Pagerby probably never imagined he'd be abandoned and abused by my wife like this. The look he gave me was full of cold, bitter hatred. I leaned weakly against my wife's chest and complained softly, offhandedly. Honey, Pagerby was glaring at me. He seems to really hate me. Did I do something wrong? It's not your fault. Madness crept into my wife's eyes. She snapped at the bodyguards. That suit I gave him, that watch I bought him, strip it all off and throw him out. Battered and bleeding, Pagerby was thrown out of the club. All the society guests who'd come to celebrate his birthday were stunned. After that, everyone in the circle called me a male fox. Pagerby became a laughingstock. People who'd been planning to partner with the Pei family jumped ship one by one, distancing themselves from them. Still stuck in the hospital, Pagerby completely lost it. My parents-in-law knew about the conflict between Pagerby and me. They didn't say anything outwardly, but they soon transferred me to a different department. I was moved from administration to logistics, managing the warehouse. Pagerby's start date at the company got pushed back again and again. For the first time ever, my wife talked back and argued with her parents for my sake. She forced them to transfer me to the general office as her special assistant. To show I meant no trouble, I stayed out of all company business. I was happy to just be her pretty little figurehead. A month later, Pagerby finally recovered from his injuries. The day he got his cast off, he asked my wife to meet him. My people followed them and filmed them going to an address I'd never seen before. I didn't like the sound of it, so I took 2 bodyguards and followed them there. It was a private psychology clinic. I sat in the car for a minute to calm down, then called my wife. She didn't answer. I called my father-in-law instead and told him Pagerby might be planning something bad for my wife. He didn't say much and hung up. A few minutes later, Pagerby walked out with my wife, his face dark with anger. I asked him to meet me alone. Pagerby was furious. The second he sat down, he sneered. Don't think you've won. Shall he, Mumul, come to her senses soon enough? She loves me. No matter how well you pretend to be Jung Jin, you'll never be him. I didn't know if my wife loved him, but I knew Pagerby loved the Chin family fortune more than anything. And I was going to hand it to him on a silver platter. I took a calm sip of coffee and told him another truth. Mumul loves you. The only reason she's hung up on Jung Jin is guilt and regret. The day he died, Mumu was going to turn him down and confess to you instead. Why are you telling me this? Pagerby didn't believe me. He'd been getting his ass handed to him ever since he got back to China, so his suspicion was only natural. I had no good intentions, of course. I glanced down at the wedding ring on my finger and gave a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. I just want Mumu to be able to live a normal life. Ever since you came back, she seemed more like herself again. Mumu wrote you 84 love letters over the years. They're at your secret spot. Go see for yourself if you don't believe me. Pagerby still thought I was lying, but he decided to go check anyway. The love letters were fake, of course. Their secret spot was the small apartment Jung Jin had lived in for years, the same place he'd jumped from. After meeting Pagerby, I went home and made osmanthus cake, Jung Jin's specialty. Then I said casually to my wife, I passed Sanshui Road this afternoon and thought I saw Pagerby. Does his family have relatives living there? My wife's face fell. She left me there and hurriedly told the driver to get the car ready. The people I'd hired sent me video footage. My wife didn't go up to their secret spot right away. She waited until Pagerby had left, then went up alone. Actually, my wife wasn't just wary of me trying to leech off her family fortune. She was wary of any member of the opposite sex who got close to her. She'd already started to suspect Pagerby. That night, I pretended to accidentally open Pagerby's moments, and my wife saw a photo of him with his girlfriend and their child. My wife stopped taking the olanzapine. Pagerby had brought back from Germany, and had her assistant send the pills in for testing. Obediently, I switched her back to the levetiracetam she'd been taking for 4 years. The test results for the German olanzapine came back. The bottle was full of nothing but vitamins. I'd switched them out a long time ago, of course. My wife was furious. That same day, She cut all ties and partnerships with the Pei family. Not that there were many partnerships left to begin with. I took my wife to the amusement park where she'd had her first date with Jung Jin. I acted just like Jung Jin, riding the carousel with her 10 times and buying her cotton candy. After she finished the cotton candy, she curled up docilely in my arms and couldn't stop crying. Ah Jin, Baby has another woman and a child, and he still tried to hurt me.
Why?
He promised he'd treat me like a princess forever just like you did. I stroked my wife's hair and soothed her in Jung Jin's voice. Mumu will always be my princess. You're the only one I see. I'll never so much as glance at anyone else for the rest of my life. Baby would treat you like a princess too. He's just a little reckless sometimes, that's all. My wife cried herself to sleep in my arms. I knew Pajabai was following us, so I deliberately took a photo of us together and sent it to him. 10 minutes later, Pajabai sat down across from me, his brow deeply furrowed. I woke my wife up. When she saw Pajabai, she froze for a second, then flew into a rage. She picked up a bottle of mineral water from the table and hurled it at him. The bodyguards heard my wife scream and rushed over to hold Pajabai down, letting my wife hit and scream at him hysterically. I pretended I couldn't hold her back, waiting until Pajabai begged for mercy before I carried my wife away and took her to the hospital. After being given a sedative, my wife fell into a deep sleep. My parents-in-law were frantic. The second they arrived, they shoved me aside and berated me loudly. Xiaohe, what kind of husband are you? Mumu hasn't had an episode in years. What did you do? Did you deliberately trigger an attack because you're jealous of Beibai? I'm warning you, you have no right to control who Mumu likes. The Chin family has no shortage of live-in sons-in-law. If you can't behave, get out. With red-rimmed eyes, I took out the test report for the pills and explained, putting on a stubborn front. The medicine Pajabai brought back from Germany? It's actually just vitamins. Mom was the one who brought it to our room. Pajabai said the German medicine worked better than the domestic kind, and Mom insisted Mumu switch to it. My parents-in-law read the test report in disbelief, then immediately ordered the bodyguards to beat Pajabai and throw him out of the hospital. They also called all their connections in high society and told them not to do business with the Pei family. I also quietly notified Jung Jin's parents to get their funds ready to acquire the Chin family's assets. After only a few months of glory since returning to China, Pajabai had been brought crashing down. He hated me with a passion and flooded me with messages. I never thought you'd be so scheming. You switched the pills, didn't you? Aren't you scared Moon will find out? You're the one making her have episodes. You think you can just leech off her family fortune? Dream on. Xiaohe, I'll expose your scheme and make Mumo see what you really are. I ignored him, and gave my wife double the usual dose of levetiracetam, as per the doctor's instructions. After discovering how malicious Pajabai was, my parents-in-law wouldn't even let him set foot in the house. But Pajabai had grown up with my wife, and he quickly thought of a way to keep her on the hook. He used the mementos of Jung Jin he'd kept to trade for resources from my wife. When my wife got her hands on Jung Jin's old things, she chose to forgive Pajabai for switching her medication. Or maybe Pajabai told her his side of the story, and she believed him and started to suspect me. None of it mattered. Pajabai didn't have many of Jung Jin's mementos left. If he wanted to take my place, he'd have to find a way to get rid of me. I got transferred to another department again. I went from the CEO's special assistant to a low-level employee in the operations department. All my coworkers gossiped non-stop. Pajabai joined Chin Group headquarters, parachuting into my operations department as the new director. My wife personally accompanied him through the onboarding process and walked him to his office in operations. My coworkers looked at me with nothing but pity. I felt kind of bad for them, honestly. Making 5,000 yuan a month but worrying about whether their boss was getting a divorce. In 4 years of marriage, my wife had given me 3 apartments, 2 luxury cars, countless pieces of high-end jewelry, and 5 million in cash on top of my salary. Did it really matter whether the person giving me all this money loved me or not? Pajabai had clearly realized the same thing. The second he arrived, he started nitpicking at everything I did. I checked the time and deliberately provoked him. If you've got time to come after me, why don't you put that effort into pleasing Mumu instead, you loser? It was noon, the time I usually played Jung-jin, and had lunch with my wife. Pageabai had once been a wealthy young master. To be reduced to living off a woman and mocked by a live-in son-in-law like me? He lost his temper on the spot. He picked up a stack of documents from the desk and swung them at me. I dodged instinctively, then collapsed weakly to the floor, just as the sound of my wife's high heels echoed in the hallway. Jin. My wife rushed in to help me up, her expression darker than it had been when Pageabai first came back. When she saw the thin streak of blood on my face, she strode around the desk and slapped Pageabai twice, hard. Everyone in the operations department was stunned. Pageabai was utterly humiliated. My wife still wasn't satisfied. She closed the director's office door and coldly ordered the bodyguards. Hold him down and make him kneel. He doesn't get up until Jin forgives him. I collapsed into my wife's arms, smirking triumphantly at Pageabai, and put on my most innocent, gentle act. Honey, I'm fine. It's Director Pei's first day on the job. He's still getting used to things. It's normal to be a little on edge. Don't be hard on him. Pageabai was so furious he nearly had a heart attack. Humiliated, he knelt and apologized to me. I'm sorry. I lost my temper just now. Please forgive me this once, it's okay. You were just doing your job. I acted sweet and understanding, playing the part of Jung-jin at work perfectly. My wife was pleased with how gracious I was. She left Pageabai there and took my hand, leading me to the company cafeteria for lunch. I ordered my wife her 2 favorite dishes, and snuck a glance at the security feed showing Pageabai in his office, on the phone with his girlfriend. When he hung up, I deliberately sent him a message. You can't even be a decent side piece. No wonder the Pei family's going under. When Pageabai realized the Jung-jin memento trick wasn't working, he turned to superstition. My parents-in-law were both very superstitious. They'd chosen Jung-jin for the marriage because his birth chart was supposed to bring prosperity to the Chin family. Before I married into the family, they'd had a fortune teller. Read mine too, and they'd said I had a lucky fate that would bring my wife good fortune. In 4 years of marriage, Chin Group's assets had nearly tripled. It really did seem like I brought them luck. Pageabai didn't just go around looking for fortune tellers. He also used praying for Jung-jin as an excuse to take my wife to Gwangan Temple to burn incense. I followed them at a distance and heard the monk Pageabai had hired say to my wife, "Young lady, you have a difficult fate. You lost the love of your life when you were young. After marriage you'll be cursed by someone with a harsh fate. Your family will fall apart and all your wealth will be stolen by others. How can I break this curse?" My wife clutched Pageabai's hand tight, her face dark. The monk shook his head solemnly and said, "Amitabha, to break the curse, you must either remarry or have a child. Thank you for your guidance, master." My wife thanked him politely, her face as dark as ink. After a long moment she said quietly, "I want a child. Jin's child. Once I have the baby, I'll divorce." "Shall he?" Pageabai's eyes filled with tears of joy. He pulled my wife into a tight hug. Jin would be so happy if he knew. Listening from nearby, I was pretty happy too. My wife had frozen Jung-jin's sperm. The reason she'd made me get a vasectomy was so that one day, if she wanted a child, she could use his sperm for IVF. My wife was a woman of action. 3 months after stopping her medication, Pageabai helped her keep it a secret from me. They made trip after trip to the hospital, and finally the IVF was successful. My parents-in-law were overjoyed and welcomed Pageabai back into the fold. Smug as could be, Pageabai came over to gloat. "Shall he? I know you got a vasectomy. Bet you didn't see this coming. Mumu's always loved Jung-jin, and she always will. No matter how much your face looks like his, you'll never be him on the inside. It's not even your kid. What are you so happy about?" I turned on my voice recorder and sipped my tea calmly, acting like he was nothing but background noise. The baby in my wife's belly was Pageaibai's. My people hadn't just gotten proof he'd paid someone to switch the sperm samples. They'd also filmed him talking to his parents about how to use the baby to take over the Chin family. Pageabai wasn't completely stupid. He didn't admit to switching the sperm, just gave me a meaningful smile and said, "Guess why I'm so eager about all this?" I smiled back and kept drinking my tea. My wife had always wanted to have Jung-jin's child. She'd been too busy consolidating her power at the company these past few years, but now she'd secured her position and put all the Chin relatives in their place. Pejabai's suggestion was exactly what she'd wanted. A month into her pregnancy, word spread through high society that my wife was going to divorce me soon. I knew the rumors had come from Pejabai's circle. I anonymously sent my wife a video of Pejabai celebrating his birthday with his girlfriend and son, promising them a good life. I also sent her the video of Pejabai and his parents plotting to take over the Chin family. All the evidence of how he'd switched the sperm samples and gotten my wife pregnant with his child. The pregnancy hormones made my wife's mood even more volatile than usual. She hated Pejabai with every fiber of her being. On the anniversary of Jiangjin's death, I told Pejabai to come pick up my wife at the Chin house. Then I pretended to be upset and left with my parents-in-law to go to the Jiang family home first. In previous years the four of us had always gone together. This year, Pejabai and his family were coming too. Before we left, I let Pejabai know that my wife was investigating him. I also sent him information about why his father's affair with his secretary had been exposed. Less than half an hour after we arrived at the Jiang house, something happened to my wife and Pejabai. I got a call from the housekeeper, my father-in-law, who'd been drinking ginseng chicken soup every day for 4 years, had suffered a heart attack on the spot. My mother-in-law had also fainted from the shock. I calmed the housekeeper down and quickly called 120. I asked the Jiang family elders to go with my parents-in-law to the hospital, then grabbed my keys and rushed home as fast as I could. My wife had been pushed down the stairs by Pejabai. She'd miscarried on the spot and was unconscious. Pejabai was being held down by the bodyguards, his face as pale as a ghost. Furious, I beat him up myself, then called the police without hesitation. Pejabai was taken away by the police. My wife, in an unfortunate twist of fate, had fallen down the stairs and suffered severe damage to her head and spine. There was little hope she would ever wake up. When Mrs. Wu, my mother-in-law, heard that her daughter might end up in a vegetative state, she nearly fainted again right after regaining consciousness. She glared at me viciously and snapped, "Xiaohe, is this your doing? Mom, I know I'm not good enough for Mumu. I signed the prenuptial agreement before we married." This was all Pejabai scheming against her. I bowed my head, feigning grief, unlocked the tablet, and played all the evidence. That Pejabai! How dare he scheme against our family? My mother-in-law flew into a rage, slammed the tablet down, and angrily called the Jiang family. Jiangjin didn't kill himself. Pejabai pushed him. We have proof. A faint smile tugged at my lips. I put on a look of shock and said, "But Pejabai and Jiangjin were such close friends. Why would he do something like that?" The Jiang parents arrived quickly. After seeing the evidence of Pejabai plotting against the Chin family, and watching the video of Pejabai committing murder that my mother-in-law had saved, the elderly couple broke down in tears. Back when the Pei family was struggling with cash flow, we gave them 200 million to tide them over. We never thought Pejabai would be the one who killed Ajin. "May I ask where you got this evidence, Mrs. Wu?" Jiangjin's father asked, his eyes red, his gaze sharp and searching. Jiangjin's mother also paused, tears in her eyes but a calculating glint beneath them. "Mom just got the evidence too. I think whoever sent it only dared come forward now that Pejabai has been arrested." 7 years ago, the Pei family had eyes and ears everywhere in Ningcheng. I stepped in smoothly to defuse the situation for my mother-in-law. The Jiang parents both looked at me, their expressions unreadable. My mother-in-law, flustered and guilty, scrambled to add, "That's right, we just got it. A nurse came to take my temperature this morning, and borrowed my tablet before she left." Father Jiang frowned thoughtfully for a moment, then said in a low voice, "The video doesn't seem complete. I'll ask the hospital for the security footage later, to see who delivered the evidence." My mother-in-law visibly tensed and glanced at me for help. I couldn't let her down. I stood up at once and offered, "Uncle Jiang, let me go instead. The hospital belongs to the Chin family. I'll be faster." There was no security footage to begin with. If Father Jiang went himself, he'd surely find out my mother-in-law was lying. I was a good son-in-law after all. Of course I'd look out for her. Father Jiang stared at me meaningfully for a moment, then nodded hesitantly. "Thank you, Xiaohe. Sorry to trouble you with this." I smiled, went to the courtyard to smoke a cigarette and pop a mint. Then found a random patient's child, and asked them to deliver a USB drive to the Jiang family's bodyguards. A few minutes later, the Jiang parents left with grim faces. After Jiang Jin passed away, the Jiang parents had twins via IVF. They still loved their son deeply. Finding out he'd been murdered, they would never let the killer get away. Paijabai was locked up. But why should my parents-in-law get to live peacefully? My father-in-law was resuscitated and lay unconscious for a day before finally waking up. When he learned that my mother-in-law had given the video of Paijabai killing Jiang Jin to the Jiang family, he fainted again. I pressed the call bell, my eyes red with feigned worry. My mother-in-law couldn't stop crying either. Thankfully he was tough and pulled through again, waking up less than half a day later. I stepped out of the elevator carrying a nutritious meal I'd cooked myself. Through the bug I'd planted, my father-in-law's lowered voice came through clearly. I've asked a lawyer to come tomorrow to draw up a will. We don't know when Moon will wake up. We can't leave all the family fortune to her. Leave it to who then? Shall he? He's just some poor kid from nowhere. Of course he's greedy. It's safer to put the inheritance in the hands of someone we trust. If something happens to Mumo, we'll donate everything to charity. No one gets a cent. My mother-in-law retorted sharply. There was a moment of silence, then my father-in-law spoke again. Then let's hold off for now. We'll talk about it after we're discharged. I pretended I'd heard nothing, walked into the room with the lunchbox, and took care of their meal myself. 4 years as the perfect devoted son-in-law, and I'd never once stepped out of line. With my wife comatose, company matters fell back on my father-in-law's shoulders. His post-heart attack complications were severe. He lasted only a few days before he couldn't keep up. Several times he looked at me like he wanted to say something but held back. I'd spent 4 years stuck in entry-level roles at the company. He knew better than anyone what kind of work I did. But before he could make up his mind, Paijaibai's parents showed up. The USB drive I'd given the Jiangs contained footage of the last 10 minutes of Jiang Jin's life. It wasn't just Paijabai who'd killed him, it was my wife too. My parents-in-law had helped stage the scene, forged alibis, and taken my wife and Paijabai away from the scene. Paijabai's parents had no idea their son was a murderer. Sending him to study in Germany had been my father-in-law's idea. He'd arranged the school on short notice, gotten the visa processed, and shipped Paijabai out of the country immediately. Everyone knew how hard it was to graduate from a German university. Paijabai had been gone 7 years. Jiang Jin's death had cemented my wife's reputation as a grieving lover, and Paijabai's as a loyal best friend. Now that Paijabai was under arrest and my wife was comatose, the Pai couple would never let my parents in. Lawhood helped cover up the murder off the hook. They'd brought bodyguards with them. I pretended to try and stop them, then quickly stepped out of the room. You two are shameless. You threw my son under the bus to save your own family. Why don't you just die? I'll kill you, you old witch. Help! The sounds of a scuffle lasted for a while. Then a bodyguard stumbled out, covered in blood, his face white with terror. Someone's dead. We didn't do anything. We were just protecting our employer. Call the police. I glanced at the 2 shaken bodyguards and dialed the police. One of my parents-in-law was dead, the other critically injured. Paijabai's parents were beaten by hospital security and eventually taken away by the police. With everything that had happened, I had no choice but to step in and take over the company as their son-in-law, tears in my eyes. My father-in-law's funeral was held quietly. The charges of aiding and abetting a murderer against him and my mother-in-law were still under investigation. When my mother-in-law woke up and learned his funeral had already been held, she dropped dead from shock on the spot. After another funeral, the Jiang parents found me and asked what I planned to do. I don't have the authority to make decisions about Chin Group shares right now. Under inheritance law, I only inherit if all 3 of them are gone. Once the truth comes out, shareholders will definitely pull out. Go ahead with your acquisition. Once the truth comes out, shareholders will definitely pull out. Go ahead with your acquisition. I laid out my plan simply, my smile bitter. Aren't you going to ask who I really am? You can tell us when you're ready. To be honest, we're grateful you uncovered the truth about Ajin's death. Everyone in high society went wild when they found out Jung Jin had been murdered by my wife and Paige Bai. They all tried to get the full story out of me. I was too busy reining in the company's shareholders to bother with them. Half a month later, Paige Bai and his parents were formally arrested. My wife woke up, but was left with high paraplegia. I went to the hospital every day to stay with her and take care of her. As soon as she was cleared for discharge, I finished the paperwork and brought her home. She was technically out on medical parole. After all, she was a murderer too. The night we got home, I pulled up the video of her and Paige Bai killing Jung Jin, projected it onto the home theater screen, and sat with her to watch. Chin Muk-soo, look closely. Jung Jin was killed by you and Paige Bai. Your parents helped cover it up. You're a murderer. You killed Jung Jin with your own 2 hands. What right do you have to say you loved him? Chin Muk-soo went completely mad. The truth about Jung Jin's suicide, the eldest son of the Jung family, was made public with the police report on the Pei family, and it shocked the entire internet. Everyone in high society was stunned. Chin Group collapsed as shareholders pulled out en masse. The Jung parents, acting on the information I'd leaked, acquired more than 80% of Chin Group's assets. I had the insane Chin Muk-soo sent to a psychiatric hospital, telling the staff to take good care of her. Then I turned around and sold off some of the properties and shops owned by Chin Muk-soo's parents. With the money, I founded a tech company focused on smart medical device R&D. On the day the company launched, the Jung parents came to congratulate me with their twins. They asked if I'd like to be their godson. The little boy and girl held my hands and called me big brother, sweet as can be. My eyes burned. I knelt down deeply and said, Godfather, Godmother. At 28 years old, I, once an orphan, had parents, and a cute little brother and sister too. Extra Chapter 1 was an orphan. I was 5 years old when I was sent to the orphanage. At the orphanage, only able-bodied kids got adopted easily. Most of the ones left behind had some kind of disability. But even though I was healthy, no one dared adopt me. Because my parents were murderers. They'd worked together to kill my grandparents, my uncle, and my aunt's entire family. Even the baby hadn't been spared. I'd been at the orphanage a year when a wealthy man came with his son to donate supplies and do charity work. I hid in the corner, staring enviously at the boy in a white shirt, overalls, and a bow tie. I thought, if my parents hadn't been murderers, maybe I'd be just like him. The boy noticed me. He told me his name was Jung Jin. He thought I was being mistreated and didn't have enough to eat. So he slipped me a thick red envelope and told me not to worry about money. I took it without hesitation. Maybe I was bad to the bone, just like my murderer parents. Lies came easy to me. After that, Jung Jin came often. When he found out I'd lied, he comforted me instead of getting mad. He said small mistakes were fine, as long as I didn't make big ones. He was 2 years older than me. He liked to ruffle my hair and call me little brother. The orphanage got better and better because of his visits. Soon I had a room of my own, with a small desk. Jung Jin brought me lots of books, snuck me out to see the world, and told me not to let other people define who I was, to just be the best version of myself. I was little and didn't fully understand. I just thought my big brother was amazing. I got bullied at school. All the other kids knew my parents were murderers. When Jung Jin found out, he asked his parents to transfer me to a different school. He even arranged for a therapist to help me. By the time I happily got into Jung Jin's high school, I realized how different his world was from mine. The desire to close that gap burned inside me like wildfire. There were always 2 people by Jung Jin's side. Chin Muk-soo and Paige Bai. The 3 of them were as close as siblings. But I knew it was all an act. Chin Muk-soo's possessiveness was wild and twisted. Any girl who got close to either Jung Jin or Paige Bai would get put in her place. Later, they got into the same university and quickly became the most talked about students on campus. Everything changed in Jung Jin's second year of graduate school. This story warns people not to be blinded by obsession and greed. The heroine was obsessed with her old love Jung Jin, and took the male lead as a stand-in. She also tangled with her childhood friend Paige Bai, and the wealth of 2 families became their object of contention. Coveting the Chin Group's fortune, Paige Bai schemed relentlessly. The hero endured and laid plans, gradually exposing everyone's selfish motives and the truth of the old murder case. The heroine clung to illusory nostalgia and misjudged people, while Pagerby was consumed by ambition. Both ended up in tragic straits. All plots built on fake affection and coveting others' wealth will collapse. One should let go of empty obsessions, treat others sincerely, never crave fame and fortune that do not belong to you, and stay true to oneself to avoid disaster.